Hello, everybody, and welcome to the LJL Officially Unofficial Podcast, episode 35. No, we're not going to keep doing this meme anymore. Episode 2, season 2. No. It's episode 8, ladies and gentlemen. I'm all over the place, but I'm also MaskedSwan. Alex always knows, actually, go by MaskedSwan on the internet. The man in the middle is the fantastic, fantasizing man himself. Samuel Initialize have good, sir. Welcome.
Pleasure to be here as always. We're done with the regular season and, well, close enough. I'm so excited to be here chatting some more in-depth League of Legends LJL stuff with you all.
And looking dashing with a shirt on, sir, I must say.
Sometimes you gotta dress up, man, you know?
Not like you just came from a cast or anything.
No, nothing like that.
Literally, both of us have, actually. We felt like an
hour
straight into LJL stuff.
And the man that is unequaled by any other color caster... It's Alex
Lexi.
Nymaera.
It's MaskedSwan. Yeah,
no. Welcome, Alex, to the cast.
Hey, how's it going? This is a really cool episode to be a part of because, of course, this one's where we get to recap a lot. Yeah, we're looking forward to stuff, but I really like kind of having the holistic look at things. So I'm really looking forward to today.
Yeah, episode number 8 will be where we recap everything. But before we get into that, Nymaera, what is this podcast?
So, what are we recapping? What are we capping off? We're capping off.
Who are we? What are you doing?
Spring 2021 split, because this podcast is about Japanese League of Legends. That includes their professional circuit of the LJL. And yeah, that's what we do. 3 people from London talking about Japanese League of Legends.
Because it makes sense, and by proxy, if 3 English guys are talking about League of Legends in Japan, surely we have some affiliation with Riot, Samuel.
No, we don't. We are alone in the world, adrift, and by ourselves. It's pretty great this way, though. We get to put our own opinions out there. But if Riot wants to come in, have some words with us, get us on board, you know where to reach us. Hit those DMs.
Yes, hit the DMs, not anything else, Papa Riot, please. And specifically, don't hit any more Ari nerves. I don't think Nymaera could deal with that anymore.
No, Ari nerves? No.
It's okay. Just LeBlanc probably getting nerfed soon, so it's okay. It's okay. You can find this audio version of this podcast on all audio streaming platforms, and if you're on an audio streaming platform, you can find this video on YouTube, where you can see our lovely faces and also a bit of on-screen graphics from time to time. Gentlemen, this week we are going to be doing, as Nymaera already glistened towards and glimpsed into the future, we're going to be doing our recap episode for this one, meaning we're going to be focusing more specifically on each of these teams, how we got to this place, and the stories for each of these teams. We will be spending a little bit more time on the bottom 2 teams that we will no longer be seeing anymore, and that will be the team of Axis and Burning Core. Then we'll be moving on in groups of 2, first talking about Crest Gaming Act and the Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks Gaming, as they are our bottom 2 teams who will be kind of at the mercy of our next 2 teams, which are Sengoku Gaming and V3. Once they have their tiebreaker match, number 3 will get to pick out of Crest Gaming Act and Hawks to play, and the other who lost the tiebreaker match will get the remainder left over. And then obviously we have our kings that are in that juggernaut match of V3 Esports facing off against Detonation Focus Me. Gentlemen, we might as well start at the very bottom of the table, and let's talk about our team in last place, the team that looked so good at the very beginning. We had great things to say about them. That's Axis. 8-loss streak, not a great showing from the Narwhals, is it?
No, but even so, their last week, they got so close.
Yeah.
Oh, I was so disappointed with they managed to get nearly 5,000 gold ahead versus the Jesters, and it just wasn't quite, or the CGA rather, and it wasn't quite enough. They put up a bit of a fight versus the Jesters. They were ahead in gold for a lot of that one. There is something to this team where they've got things to work with, particularly in the early game. It's just some of this mid and late game decision making, some of the engage, honestly, some of their engage is just a bit off, and it's so frustrating.
It's frustrating.
What you got to say now?
That's the word for it, right? Pretty chill about this team. Just that they didn't find the way to make that they didn't find a way to slot comfortably into their player roles. I don't think that their top laner in Inno looked comfortable in anything outside of Renekton. I think when he was on Renekton, that was fine. Renekton's fallen off a bit in the meta. He struggled on Gnar in the one game where they were ahead. That's the one that Sam was talking about. I think that was the one versus CGA, where he just kind of failed. He kind of was okay to follow up, but he wasn't like that sheer force of will that we see in like a Nap Wukong be at times and whatever. And I think we actually even saw that this week too. It's like the night and day performance between, that. Yeah, I think the rookies kind of ended up falling off, and it's really sad because again, it felt like effectively just Honey and Hoglet were the two that were really on board with what was happening with the team, the ones that were actually achieving stuff, and even then Hoglet was hit and miss, so it was just kind of Honey most of the time. So I mean, I'm sad to see this team go. I think that there were pieces that we saw earlier in the split working off really well. And remember, this is the last place finished after the best start to a split this org has ever had.
Which is disappointing, right? Like, this should have been the opportunity for them to actually make it out this time around, and they just didn't. And I would definitely agree. I think the player that I was obviously loving coming into this was Megamin. Like, that was one of my boys I was hyping up, and it was such a fall from grace because it was such a solid start, and couldn't figure out the Azir, which I was concerned about from his scouting grounds performance. Syndra just never got off, and I was like screaming for him to just go back to see what worked in Scouting Ground, play that Silas, play that Zed that we talked about. I get it's not meta, but hey, if you're winning with it, the best mid laner who's won the most in DFM is Syros, and he does his own stuff already, so you can quite clearly do it in LJL.
I think particularly the thing about Silas is a huge thing, right? Because I think coming into even Super Week, we were asking, look, they have to particularly after Super Week, they have to flip the table. They did nothing. They did nothing interesting. They put him back on Victor and he looked suspect on it. I think asking someone to pick Zed is always a bit you get why he says because he's a Zed main, right? Like he played that a lot in Scouting Grounds. And he played the one game of it. It's so hard to pick it in pro though, like proper pro organized play.
You gotta have very specific
particularly the Silas though, I'm sat there, I'm like, it's a legit pick. It's a legit pick. I think it's actually much underrated in a lot of the pro things. Anyway, I think Axis just kind of failed to find anything that worked for themselves after week 3. So
look, I'll add some bright sparks in. The early games have actually been relatively strong. Hoglet actually has been I think Hoglet has actually been pretty good in the first 10-15. He's got great vision score, good ganks, he's got things going on. Honey as well, such a good AD carry. Like there is things this team can work around. It's not like there is no hope for this team, which is what makes this end of the split so frustrating. Because it's like you can see the strengths, but they are falling down. They can't quite get up the whole way up the ladder before they fall back down again. And it's a little bit frustrating to see. That said, looking forward towards summer where maybe they can try and get a little bit more on again, keep learning, getting some more on. There's a lot of development that can be done. And if they can maybe find a way to work on that sort of 15 to 20 minute mark where things start kind of falling away for these guys, I think there's a bit of hope for this team yet.
The thing is, I was looking over some of their stats and comparing it to the teams that were winning a lot, like DFM and Rascal Jester, and they're not getting the consistent first Dragon, first Turret, and early Gold in the first 15, which is how everybody else, well, in major regions, I just recently uncovered a huge amount of data, but basically the top 3 in LEC, they just dominate the first 15 minutes and normally just lump themselves into winning the game a lot of the time. That's currently how the metagame is strive to be played at the moment. You scale, you get early objectives, and you can try and control the map. Axis are good at playing reactively to their opponent, but proactively, I find they struggle. And I think, I don't know, I'm just disappointed. I think that really did something. Sam, you really summed it up perfectly with this team in your first opening line. This is disappointing.
There's a bit of frustration. Like, you can see some bright spots, as we've mentioned, but the flaws have not really been solved.
Yeah, no, they have not. Let's switch it over. Actually, before we do switch this over, because this is a question I want to always ask at the end of each of these teams, especially these two at the bottom. What do we want to see from Axis coming into summer? Because now that we won't be seeing them anymore, and this is probably the last opportunity we'll really talk about this team. And as the same with Burning Core, what do I want to see? What would you guys like to see from Axis moving forward? Like going into summer, do you want to see a roster change? Do you want to see something else? Do you want to see more of Dicey, for instance? I don't know.
I don't think the support switching was a particularly large thing for them. I don't think that's the problem. So my worry is, I think it's maybe a bad idea to throw out the rookies and defenestrate the juniors or whatever the old adage is. But
bring in day one again.
Day one.
Get rid of Honey.
Well, you say that, but then I'm like, Honey was.
Yeah, right, Sam. Your reaction was perfect to that.
I mean, I think if you're going to stick with this roster, and that's fine, it's a bit of a developmental roster, I think you do need to find some clearer options for what they're doing in that mid game. Particularly with saying, okay, I need someone who is able to control when we go in, and also probably more ways to just cultivate Honey being able to carry efficiently. And that means Megaman needs to probably find ways to be more stable in game. And I need someone like Nemo to just step up some of these engages.
The thing for me is that, like, the easiest way to go in is literally have Rel on your team. Rel does Rel things, and they had Rel multiple times throughout the split, and they flubbed it. So I look at this and I'm like, I think they have to just completely rip up the playbook and say we got to start over. Probably.
Or you can get Vivid in, and that could probably fix your problems.
But then the question is,
but then Vivid's not available, so.
But because he's going off to national service stuff like that. I look at Axis and I'm just like, I think much like I would have liked to see in week 7, you just gotta just flip the table and be like, we're playing comfort. It's not necessarily meta, but that's probably what's going to work for our players better, make them more comfortable on their playmaking picks.
Might be the solution for it. Give counter pick preference to the players that need it most, and try and figure out a strategy. Gentlemen, Burning Core is the other team that we will no longer be seeing, and this arguably, if we're disappointed with Axis, we've got to be pretty furious at Burning Core, because this is beyond disappointing. This is not meeting expectations. This is well and truly not even matching the bare minimum. This is an F-, and this is the kind of thing where you get a report card sent home to your parents and you get put on report because you've been sent to the naughty step now. Like, this isn't where any of us had Burning Core. We had Rangers, but never did we not think this roster wouldn't make playoffs. I
think we said 6th to 2nd or 3rd.
Yeah.
Like, we thought they'd be all over the place. Not to this extent.
Samuel, you're not coming through with audio. I just saw Sam's mouth moving and he didn't have audio coming through. Sorry, you continue, Nymaera.
A strange thing. Well, I think the thing about Burning Core is that we thought it should be a quote-unquote upgrade from their summer roster, right? They took out UGO and they put in Gadiadu. Gadiadu was maybe top 3-4 mid from last year, and that was like with a really contested mid pool when we had Perion still in the region. Aria obviously popping off left, right, and center. I mean, a lot of people talk about Seros still obviously playing really well towards the end of summer, actually. So to see, like, Gadiadu come in, not really slot in, only really find success on one pick, and that's his Twisted Fate, which is super banned anyway.
Right.
Burning Core just looked directionless. I think it's a similar thing to what Sam was saying in terms of Axis and what are they doing in their mid game. But then they also have the problem of, what do they do with the whole, like, laning thing? Because they, besides Rayfarki, their lanes were absolutely catastrophically bad.
And it was such a disappointing performance because, like, we've already talked about obviously how we think. Well, I've already mentioned on the podcast before that I thought UGO was hard done by Burning Core, by them completely getting rid of him. Not that I don't think Gadiadu shouldn't be playing the LJL. Absolutely, he should be. But until it started to work for him, it's like. What was going on? And the thing is, like, Gadiadu was playing a completely different pool of champs, really. Like, he wasn't on his LeBlanc, his Zoe, his
you
Ryze.
can't really play LeBlanc in the current meta.
No, I mean, we mutually agreed about this, but no Zoe games, and that was arguably his best champion in 2020, and he wasn't allowed to play it once.
So I was talking about this with a couple of pros as well, because I'm trying to remember who I was with. I think I was with a couple of the UK guys. So again, like in around the pro scene, kind of saying, well, you know, why aren't people playing playing Zoe rather? And it's like a lot of it's because people are just playing turbo engage comps. You're playing Leona, Rel, Alistar, which is stuff which getting right on top of the Zoe. And like, I mean, we saw the one game that V3 played a Zoe, and we're like, even then, like there was a couple of times where Zoe was just like completely jumped on, couldn't do anything. So like,
and that was Ace playing Zoe, and he was normally one of the better ones.
Exactly, particularly outside of laning phase is often very good on that pick. So I think that the team was inflexible, particularly once, always going back to Graves and, you know, struggling to do a lot of stuff. I mean, I look at Burning Core and like their champion pools weren't really fit for purpose. Rayfarki wasn't on pressure picks that could actually solo carry. And yeah, it's just, again, this one's a bit more bitter because we're just there like, come on, you took DFM to 5 games last summer. You looked really good. Proud was really good. And Rayfarki and once never reached their highs of 2020. Gadiadu was struggling and Yuhi was a liability.
And it was just that, right? Like, this was the team that we thought, honestly, because they're keeping 4 out of the 5 parts together, even with some of the problems that we have identified and found out through following meticulously Burning Core's history and communications that do leak out from time to time, and just talking to members in the community. Burning Core, even with those problems, keeping 4 members out of the 5 from the original roster is just almost always meant to be an upgrade. The fact that it didn't go that way was just such a I mean, it's really bad that it went that way. The fact that the team stayed together and it got worse.
But that's holistically over this split. In terms of the last week, they did win against V3. That was really cool. That was great.
True.
You know, beating V3, who, you know, were at that point stuck in that like second, third spot. I think Initia1ise's camera's back, so we'll hopefully.
I think.
Oh, you're back. Lovely.
Hello,
Cool.
sir.
Whatever.
For
Internet
whatever
stuff.
reason, Discord decided it could no longer find a route
Yeah,
through
Sam,
RTC, which
I'm
was a bit
really interested in your take.
I'm back.
I'm really interested in your take, particularly on Burning Core, because obviously you were so high on them coming into the split, and obviously like we were talking a little bit about in terms of like champion pools for Galliado not being quite the same as 2020, but then like for me, particularly once, and Rayfaki never reached 2020 levels, and I'm wondering how much that hamstring them.
I think there is something to that, but I will also say I think the connection between Once and Rayfaki, and then with Galliado in particular, wasn't there. Like, they were skirmishing, honestly, pretty well. We still saw some decent ideas about skirmishing, but by the time they came to skirmishing, they'd be down 2,000-3,000 gold nearly every single game because, bluntly, they couldn't seem to find a way to lane stably. There would be one lane that got catastrophically far behind without fail, nearly. And it kind of left Once out trying to eke out advantages when he had no pressure in any lanes, and then would get punished because it's Once, and he's never going to back down from a fight. And it would just horribly snowball against them, guaranteed. And yes, they'd come into some skirmishes with some right ideas, but you're trying to fight from a 2,000-3,000 gold deficit consistently, and that's just really hard. Really hard. I mean, the one game that comes to mind, there was one particular game, and I'm just trying to remember which one it was precisely. I think it might have been in possibly week 6, where, it might well have been against Sengoku. I think it's probably the one I'm thinking of here, where they managed to effectively lose every single outer turret. For different reasons. Like, if they get the counter pick bot side with Ezreal Karma.
They vertical jungle.
And they get vertical jungling. They get vertical jungling, and then somehow, some way, they lose bot lane turret despite teleporting Rayfaki down to come and offer support. That cost Rayfaki his top lane turret because he teleported out. And a Rift Herald, and then they get Rift Herald in mid lane because they didn't get to contest Rift Herald, and they lost turret for first turret, no less, when they'd got vertical jungling and Ezreal Karma for lane prior, which they didn't get. So they lose every single outer turret for differing reasons, because for whatever reason, they could not be a 5-man cohesive unit, partly because they couldn't play to their own game plans, because sometimes the players weren't up to snuff to play mechanically the right way. You cannot, at the minute, I feel, play a lane, like a consistently weak lane bot lane, I think. Especially if you're not going to be able to...
You're not going to get center every game.
No, you aren't. And I also think that there's an element, it's like, if you're going to do that, then you need to be able to have a mid laner who can come and support one of your other side lanes. That's what a lot of mid laners are doing right now.
I'll be honest, I think a game that really points out a huge problem that the bot lane had pretty early on for Burning Core it was week 3, their loss against Sengoku Gaming. And this wasn't where Sengoku had a particularly amazing bot performance out of NT and Gango, but it was significantly better than Yuhi and Proud. And Yuhi and they did, yes. And this was also the spot where Yuhi got caught out at the very beginning. Proud was trying to make up, was on the rel that we've already identified as a power pick.
Crash downing out and getting cancelled by the face breaker,
This
was just like a perfect sum up. And then basically Burning Core saw that game and they just ran it back for almost every single game for the rest of the split.
Yeah, they were hugely far behind, and then like only Rayfaki
they were getting good drafts. Like, that's the thing. Like, Burning Core were drafting well. Like, let me tell you the comp: Gragas, Graves, Orianna, Jhin, Rel. That's a perfectly fine comp. It's got ball delivery service. It's got rel, so you've got engage. You have displacement with Gragas.
Once on a carry,
right? It's perfect, and yet they just run it down from the first minute. It almost doesn't matter what the coaching staff is doing, and I would argue that their coaching staff has actually done a really good job in the pick and ban phase.
Yeah, I think that game like has 3 takeaways for me, and I think this kind of applies to most of Burning Core's lot. Well, like that game exemplifies like 3 different things. One, their bot lane is just not up to snuff. Like they don't lane effectively badly. Like they are a straight up liability. That can be either of those players at any given point. I think there's a disconnect between the 2 players, and that means that Proud can't be out on the map. You know, even when he's losing lane on really power picks like the Rel and shit like that, right? That's not really acceptable. Ray Farkey is still okay. I don't think he's got the champion pool to. He's not played as Jace, which is a huge thing for me. I really think a Ray Farkey Jace in this split would have been really fun to see. I think it would have been huge. And the other thing is that Once just doubles down when he's behind. There was this game particularly. He was on the Graves and he runs into his jungle, tries to duel him and just dies over and over.
Yeah.
It's like, because your lanes are already losing, you don't ever get to play for mid or late game because you're way too far behind. Anyway, that's my take on Burning Core. I think that Ray Farkey's still all right.
Yeah.
Everyone else on the map is struggling. I think particularly early game from Once and Yuhi is poor.
Can I get your final take, Sam, as well?
Yeah, I think I largely agree with that. I mean, I will question that. I think my problem is like I'm struggling to see where the carry is on Burning Core, because Ray Farkey hasn't been it this split for whatever reason. I think sometimes because it feels like they're drafting more towards bot lane, which I think has been a mistake. And I'll also say that I think for all that Once has not been playing that well, I think he's also been very poorly supported. Because Proud has been exactly, because I think Proud has not been able to roam as freely as he would like. I think Gadiadu has very rarely had lane pressure, and even just dumb things like, as we said, Ray Farkey's been okay, but he hasn't necessarily been the carry threat we've wanted him to be either. Because there was also that one game versus DFM where Ray Farkey dies for first blood solo. Once goes to try and clean up the mess. Doesn't quite get the kill because Ebby gets body slam up quite quickly enough to get out. And then Once dies trying to retreat into his own jungle because Steel is waiting for him. And then he dies at Raptors again. It's like, yes, Once is doubling down, but it's also this point about like, who else is going to carry on that squad? When Burning Core have one, it's often because Once has put up really good damage numbers.
Let's use this, what you're saying right here, Sam. Let's use what you're saying right here, right now, so we can just quickly get onto our next topic.
Yeah.
What can Burning Core then do in come summer? Like, do they need to start playing through Once, do you think?
I think you either just hard index into playing through Once as hard as you can and basically saying, screw laning, we just play for skirmishes as early on and snowball that way, because then we don't have to just have stable lanes. Or you need to go back to solo queue for some of these players and get better at damn laning. There are or working on the synergies, because like I think sometimes Gadiadu is. I don't think Gadiadu is innately a bad laner. We've seen that last year. He's not. But there needs to be some synergy issues then, because Gadiadu is not playing the lane the way they need to for the squad to work.
Okay. I'm just gonna we'll just go with Gadiadu needs to improve, with the whole team improving their laning phase. Nymaera, what do you think they can do? Because I mean, I'm at a bit of a loss for words for Burning Core. I think the Once idea is a good direction to maybe take and try.
I remember I had a conversation with Maple Street again, which kind of early split, when like obviously I was talking about Burning Core being like, yeah, you know, I've got some hope for the team, think they'll be variable, but whatever. And I know that Maple's opinion was, yeah, when you've got Once on your team, effectively, you know you have to play from him because his champion pool is only going to be about himself. So I think that whilst Once is on the team, you kind of have to, right? But I think the problem is that they didn't have any priority mids unless they had Azir. And even then, that was tenuous. I think Gadiadu's best champion was TF and then Azir. I think that they didn't understand. I think, broadly speaking, Burning Core needs to work on win conditions, but like, and actually understanding them. But most of that just falls apart before you even get to that conversation where you're like,
I mean, because I would argue that a huge problem was honestly the mid lane support play. Obviously bot lane was just a complete dumpster half the time,
right? Because
it felt like everyone was playing weak side.
It's like somehow, because Ray Farkey knows that Once is not going to gank, because he's not playing any like particularly top helpful champions, right? Once knows he's not going to get support from Proud, because Proud is constantly locked under turret because Yuki's laning poorly. They don't get any vision from Proud, which means that Gadiadu can't push up in mid lane. Gadiadu is also not playing priority matchups, so he can't push up and get up his own vision. It's a whole just dearth of early game pressure from draft and from play. And there's a lot of multi-factor responses to this.
And it's the fuck thing, because they'll get ahead, and they'll get ahead in the pick and ban phase, and then throw it in the first minute.
Well, that's just it as well. Because the other thing is, like, actually, the Burning Core shows the incredible necessity of early pressure for junglers, because nearly without fail, once will at some point be forced into a man disadvantaged skirmish scenario in the river.
Yeah,
like,
he does.
That,
he just gets caught out.
And like and the thing is, it's not like you can't go for. It's not like you don't really get the how do I put this? You don't get the leeway as a jungler really to give over that kind of early pressure on things like scuttle crabs for free.
No,
really, you really don't want to, because it ruins games. Like those kind of early, particularly against a lot of these farming junglers that have been so prevalent. Udyr, Hecarim, Lilia, Talia earlier on in the split. Olaf. You give them 2 or 3 camps advantage early on, and that will snowball incredibly hard. Especially when
getting that, but then that's where wants to play around, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And in some ways, it's like, like when it's like, I am the win condition, and you're not getting any resources the win condition, it's a problem. And like, yes, we've also said, as Nymaera was mentioning, like, yeah, he also just doesn't play champions that aren't the win condition, and that's a problem potentially in and of itself. Yeah. But if that's the champion pool you're playing, then you need to work with what you're playing with, because, once plays carries well, we know he does. But
yeah, it's the direction that the team is going in, and Burning Core just showed that they weren't willing to even all bow the knee, as it would be, or bend the knee to play just through Once's play style. They weren't willing to do it through really anybody, and it felt like a few chickens that had their heads cut off and were running around Summoner's Rift at points. It was a bit uncohesive. Gentlemen, we won't be seeing Burning Core anymore. We won't be seeing Axis anymore. So they are our teams that, probably outside of now just mentioning them offhandedly, we'll see you lovely 2 teams come summer split. Okay. Gentlemen, now though, we have 6 teams that we will be talking about. One of these teams will actually be meeting the same demise that Axis and Rascal Jester have, considering how the first playoff game goes this Saturday. Gentlemen, let's talk about the Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks Gaming, the most luckiest team in the world to make it into playoffs, versus Crest Gaming Act, the team that well and truly made their mark and deserve to be there.
You can see it on the screen. They have a 29% win rate and they're in playoffs.
That's nuts. Look, okay, so this is part of the deal by looking.
We'll go
Hawks okay.
First, obviously, yeah.
So let's just okay. So the thing is, everyone else above them in their standings has a 50% plus. This is the deal when you have 6 out of your 8 teams getting into playoffs. There are going to be some teams, likely, inevitably,
unless Detonation, Focus Me, and Rascal Jester don't have that record, right?
Sure. Yeah, exactly. But the point being that there's always going to be some people at the bottom of the standings that have been slapped around, probably by at least a couple teams. Unless, potentially back in spring, whereas DFM and everything else kind of brawling it out in the for the lower halves of it, which was a little bit different.
Summer was weird.
But yes, Hawks squeak him by the skin of their teeth. It doesn't look pretty. They are the final team in here. Everyone else above them has at least a 50% win rate.
Oh, let me just explain why the reason on screen why the Hawks got in and Burning Core didn't get in. That is heads up tiebreakers playing off. And guess what? They don't even have to do a tiebreaker because 2 of the wins that the Hawks got were versus Burning Core. So by default, Burning Core was screwed.
Yeah. That's what's worrying me a little bit about this playoffs as well, because Hawks went 1-1 against Axis, who you may notice are, in fact, the last place team. They've got a 2-0 over against Burning Core, who are in 7th. And their last win was against CGA, who's just above them in the standings. So, the CGA game is aside, they still, it still wasn't CGA are a very, very difficult team to read. Yeah, exactly. So there's that on top of it all. And CGA have also, really pushed DFM and then also inted against various teams. So, what are you going to do with CGA? Then you look at, V3, Sengoku, Rest Justice, and DFM have crushed them. So
at least the players got their bonus for making playoffs. They get their little salary bonus, I imagine, for making it. So that's what's good about all of this. That's the silver lining, because I don't think they're making it through. Nymaera, what's your thoughts on the Hawks so far?
Oh, they're so lucky. I thought they were maybe even. I think they maybe even should or could have lost that tiebreaker match. Well, their last match, effectively. I was kind of sat them they're in playoffs. So the question is, what can they do rather than what I expect them to do and all the doom and gloom.
You know what? I just want a yes or no answer. can they beat either Sengoku Gaming or V3 Esports Nymaera?
Let me have a look at their roster again.
All right, I want a more gut reaction from you, Initialize.
No.
No.
they
See, I
can't.
like what kind of magical world do the Hawks have to pull out to get this? Because that's part of
Sengoku
what's
Mental
going
Boom.
to define them here.
That's it. Sengoku have
So,
to
yeah.
mental boom after. So Sengoku need to be versus them first, and they need to mental boom, and that's not going to happen,
Yeah.
right? Because
And-
I look
yeah.
at the Hawks, and particularly I look at their bot lane versus either V3 or Sengoku. That is going to be a mass murder. That is going to be that's going to be a felony. That's not
Like-
going to be able to be aired on Twitch.
Like,
But we are.
like I will put it like I'll say the Zenit has got good laning stats. He just hasn't team fought. Like he's just been in no.
Well,
team
this is the
fights.
thing, right? It's less about the laning phase. It's more about
Yeah.
what they actually achieve out of it. I'm just saying, like in terms of the 2v2, Gango and NC have been wrecking face in lane. Yeah, I've been worried about them. In terms of like Hollow and Reiner from V3, get them into skirmish or team fights, they just outperform most people they're against, right?
Yeah,
They're definitely
DFM
like top...
included sometimes.
Yeah, I think that Rascal
Sure.
Jester probably sit above them in terms of that. And actually,
Probably.
maybe there's an argument to say actually Reiner's been support diffed a bit in the last week particularly. But even then,
Agreed.
I think the Hawks like they have to come in as underdogs, and I think again if they want to win, you gotta come up with something special. I don't know, like get Dasher on Aurelia and like just pop off with some weird, stupid lane counter pick lanes.
Okay. Yeah, so what I will say for the Hawks is actually the thing that has not been their trouble has been laning. Like, actually, Zenit and Dasher have laned well. Dasher, in particular, honestly, has been quite good this split, despite his team not being that great. Dasher has put up some decent numbers, some decent games, even when they've been losing. The issue for me has absolutely been Tussle and Corporal, particularly Tussle, when it comes to vision control. Good lord, Tussle stats of vision control have been atrocious for junglers. Corporal's been load of middling on that front, but like again, that's a duo thing sometimes. And my point being that like the Hawks generally lane fairly well and then cannot for the life of them set up for objectives.
I'm just
guaranteed.
thinking, I'm just remembering the last 2 games of Super Week that I casted over the
I was
Hawks.
with you.
Yeah, and I was losing my mind at what the Hawks were doing at points. Like, I think that's a really good point. Like, they just couldn't even do some of the basic fundamental stuff.
Yeah.
It's just like, ward your lanes, make sure you have timers. It just felt like things were off. And that's from a viewer perspective, which is not good.
So I'm looking at so Tussle's vision score per minute is at 1.55, which is just ahead of Cassin.
Yep.
Now, the difference there is that Cassin has the highest DPM of any jungler in the league, just ahead of the likes of Mugen and Steve, who've also got very good numbers there.
He
like,
also has higher jungle presence in his lanes compared
absolutely.
to just
he's battle
what-
warding.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you look down at Tussle's DPM, 193 DPM.
He just doesn't do anything.
He's not. Yeah, even on the champions
But
which have that potential, he's not succeeded on them.
But I will also say that if you look at the Hawks' DPMs in general, they're all near the bottom half because they're not fighting, or at least not fighting on their terms. They're often giving up a lot of objectives. Like
I will
Zenit's
say-
got the lowest DPM of any AD carry. Apamem's up there as well. Like they're just not fighting.
I will say
And
that
that's
the
with
one thing
Yuhi
from the
in
last.
league.
I'll say that that there was like the caveat of in this last week. I think so. They had that game versus DFM, and even then, so I think Corporal actually had a pretty good week. His
Yeah, no,
Alistair
Corporal
game.
played fine. I don't have a problem with
I
Corporal.
actually think so. I'm like, I know I had like those kind of like the clickbait comment of like, you know, oh, this is gonna be an absolute mass murder in the bot lane or whatever. Like, I think
That's
Corporal
what we're clickbaiting it.
outside of lane, I think Corporal's found some huge engages on Alistair and Rel, and those are the champions too. So, but like, I
But
feel
this
like
is what he did on Axis.
exactly. He'd find it on Rakan, he'd find it on whatever, and it's like there is
Found it on
just
Pantheon a few times.
I think because like I think that I think in the game versus DFM had such a hard comp to engage in onto even when they were behind because Ebby got so far ahead and relevant on Sion. It's like yeah, you can't engage
it just didn't
because
matter
there are
at
some
that
champions in the
point.
game where you can't engage past them. Sion is like
Okay.
the prime example of that right now.
So
but
here's
either way,
here's the most
go on.
damning stat for Tussle specifically, by the way. So I was talking about that DPM. He's out DPM by secret, by the way.
A support.
Out DPM by a support.
He's out DPM by a
DPM by a
support.
support. Not to just put that out there. Yeah.
Oh
Wait,
god,
wait,
that's
but this is-
tragic.
This is Dasher, right?
No, Dash
No,
is
Tussle.
good. He's like the
Dash
Tussle.
is like one of the
Tussle,
few people
but
that's like the
still.
shining light, but
Yeah,
Oh,
Tussle is
gosh.
193 DPM, secret
Alright.
Like, Secret
I
is
can
at 197.
I can confidently say this now. I don't actually understand the hype around Tussle, and I've been wondering it for a while now since we joined the league. I've been a little bit skeptical on him for a while. This split, I think he's overrated. I think
This
there's
split, yeah.
like I think there are definitely nostalgia glasses from when he was one of the better players on Rampage
I've had
and
him.
USG, and I think they have fallen off in this split for sure. And I'll be honest, Dasher, sure, he's a shining light, but I think any of the current mid laners, I would actually go out and say, I think any of the mid laners, Megamin included, like rookies included, would have equal performances to what we're seeing from Dasher. I am not impressed either.
No.
I don't think
Like,
Dash has had pop off. But the thing is, like, considering, like, I thought Dash was really good in 2020. Again, like, really contested midline role, like, because, like, we had. I would say he's similar level to
serviceable.
Gadiadu and Seros and that, like, right. You know, he's in the conversation to be up there.
He's mid.
Yeah, no, but mid of the mid players last year is actually not bad,
That was
right?
good.
That's
Yeah.
actually, you know, I'd still say that Dash was like a contender to be like one of the better players in the league. I think mid
Famine
last
was
year
also the worst,
Famine was
technically.
pretty bad,
'cause
yeah.
Yeah, I
but
mean, like, I'm looking over at Dash's again. Like, I'm like, his stats are all good. He's like top 3 in a lot of stats here, like CS, damage percentage, DPM, GPM. Like, this guy is still doing
Sure,
okay,
but
but he's like the
doing
one
anything.
member. But he's the only person doing something.
yeah,
That's
it's
my
really
problem.
hard when
He's
your
the
jungler's
only
doing
person doing
zero-
something.
when your jungler's doing
Like-
zilch. Like,
like,
it's the same.
he's-
It's the same problem with Gadiadu and some. I think that Dasher and Gadiadu are in similar situations. I think that Dasher is laning better than Gadiadu, but I think that like both of their junglers are really stopping either of those teams having a platform to actually safely fight around.
Like, I'm sorry,
You're not wrong though. You're not wrong. It's not
on
impressive,
myself.
but
Yeah.
like I think it's a team issue outside of just their own issue too. Particularly when you're playing stuff like Victor, both of those players have been playing a decent amount of that.
God.
Yeah.
I mean,
Like-
that's part of
yeah.
it, right? They're playing control mages. They're not playing anything that's even going to improve their stats
But
more.
the meta is so control mage heavy.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. Just controlling areas around
yeah.
team fights is too huge right now.
I mean, like, yeah. To compound it as to why I think Hawks will struggle is they cannot set up around objectives because Tussle is bad at setting up around objectives. He has the lowest kill participation of any jungler in the league, the second lowest vision score of any person in the league. He's not fighting, and a lot of that comes down to the fact that he is just not involved in, or rather, the setting up around objectives has just not worked. I know you alluded to it a little bit earlier. There was that one game me and you cast the Hawks, Lexi, where they managed to lose vision control of both the Baron and Dragon Pit simultaneously. You cannot do that in top flight League of Legends.
You can't do that in Diamond solo queue. What makes you think it's acceptable to do it here? Like,
I do it all the time in Diamond Solo queue.
Yeah, but you also you have 4 other players to try and make it up for you, right? So like that's part of it. I don't know. I'm just really like, let's be real. I'm gonna do this for only the bottom 4 teams because historically in playoffs, the bottom 4 never make it out. The bottom 2 that do make it out, they don't actually make it out of the first round of playoffs. I'm just using historical evidence for us since we've been covering it. What can the Hawks do differently come summer? Because I have no idea. I think outside of completely blowing up the roster and trying something else, but that's the Hawk special at this point, isn't it?
So I think they just, honestly, I think this is a bit of a coaching one where basically they need to work on what are you doing with your vision control in the minute previous to objective setups. Because it is their major flaw. Absolutely, they can never find any good team fights because they're never set up to take them, and it means they just cede objectives because they can't be in position for them, and they're engaged on and lose the fights before they get to do any deep damage. Like,
but their coach is like a legitimate proven talent who got the Flash Wolves to a 5th place at MSI in his last showing. Like, and that was with Boogie, like a player that has existed in the region. Like, I don't know.
Look, they were also
I mean,
a Greenwind coach, so.
No, that's true. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Just saying. I mean, I think Sam's got a good point. I think this is one of the teams where I would be considering roster changes. I think that, maybe you get rid of Tussle. He's a resident actually right now, so maybe you get.
But is that even worth it now?
Maybe you cut Tussle Zenit and bring in I don't know, bring back Blank if he's not on KT, and bring back I don't know, Day One or someone like that, or.
Day One, in that bot lane.
I mean, if you can offer enough money, get you Tori out of retirement, bring in someone like Blank. That might be your options. And even then, I'm not even sure.
I don't think that fixes everything. I don't. I think
and
and again, this is another team that's going through a rebuild phase, and it's difficult to say blow up your roster when you're rebuilding. But like, because there's such simple things going wrong, I don't know, because the thing is, like, you have to wait.
You could resolve those, right?
You could resolve that, but the question is, if simple things are not being resolved, that's like death knell for the team.
I mean, it's one of these problems like we've been seeing with T1, and I'm not going to go too deep down this rabbit hole because we're already a little bit going off topic here.
Talk too much about that dumpster fire of a team.
But like T1 is obviously doing the opposite of what the Hawks could have done. The Hawks could have thrown more money at this, more players at this, and tried to figure out the solution, and not have their star player apparently not around where he should be in the gaming house, which was that Ramane, where are you? But let's not go into that. The Hawks, they could have kept Aramek. They could have kept their previous roster as it was. Get rid of like they had 2 rookies on their team, and they weren't interested in doing that. They threw them to the side. They've got an Incorporal who we all think is actually one of the better support players, at least considering he's been in Elo hell on the last team that he was a part of, and even then still showed up. I mean, I don't think Apperman's been a problem, but then I don't think Apperman's been doing what we saw in 2020. Tussle looks stilted, and Zenit looks fine. But like I would have preferred Archer. Imagine Archer there in that instead.
I think the thing is, I will also think I don't think Zenit has been given a platform to team fight, like at all, unless they're in the wins. Because there is basically
he had that Ezreal game, which was his fault.
That's true.
That Ezreal game where he had that much gold on him and he just did nothing with it. Like there was also the game where he was super far ahead of Samira. He just could not peel for himself. And like I think part of it was like, I mean, like CJ did a really good job of like he finished like 14 kills or whatever, but like I said this for a little while, I think Zenit is like just not great at being a solo carry. He needs someone else to take some pressure off of him.
That's it. Not everyone's Uzi.
No, like exactly. No,
that's fine.
I mean, so not everyone can, and in this league, not everyone can be Utapon or Sol or Utori. You know, these players which can do that. I think that Zenit, like, even particularly the Ezreal game, like that is a champion where if you have a lead, game's over. Like Ezreal, if you're on a skilled Ezreal player, and this is a Korean Ezreal too, like that game should just be over, and it was just not enough.
Yeah, like again, they've been laning like pretty well, particularly Dasher and Zenit. The problem is I have yet to see a kind of losing game or even a close game. That's my problem actually, is the Hawks in a close game be able to find a team fight on their terms. They just don't. They do it fine from ahead because they can snowball from there. And then Dash from Zenit get to run over team fights and it looks fine. But otherwise, like, Apperman, Zenit, Tussle, good lord, Tussle, cannot put out DPM, cannot find team fights, and seemingly can't contest a vision in the river. Like, that's problematic.
I think you're right. I was trying to figure out what kind of playstyle does the Hawks bot lane need to start playing around, because it's not working, and they don't want to be a carry like a lot of the top teams that have already qualified in LEC and LCS. But I was like, what kind of playstyle would work? Neon over in Dignitas at the moment. That kind of more supportive playstyle to just play around Slatigo, play around Fate God, play around Dardoch, and kind of just necessitate and kind of go, I will put out the damage, but you guys are the main
You need
carry.
a Dardoch then, and that's difficult.
Yeah,
that's difficult to come by.
The thing is, I don't even necessarily mind putting more into Zenit, but if you're going to do that, then for the love of all that is holy... Yeah, well, also just set up for a team fight so you can actually auto-attack, rather than like, oh no, we've been engaged on because we had no vision trying to funnel into the river. Oh, we're all dead.
You know what?
You can't. If you've got to die before a team fight begins, it's not going to work, especially going into playoffs.
You need a Dardoch? Go get Blank. I'm gonna actually double down on that. Go save Blank from the absolute hell that he's in at the moment. Bring him back to the LJL with love. Come back, Blank. You might have to take a little bit of a pay cut, but come back. We'll let you definitely play on the main stage. Like we won't fuck you over at least, mate. Like don't worry about that. Crest Gaming Act, gentlemen, a team that has continued to show that they will foster rookie talent and make it into some of the best the league will ever see. Obviously, Arya has left them, but Kassin, that rookie player that I'm talking about in this analogy, hasn't had a bad rookie split. It wasn't the greatest rookie split out of every rookie that came in, I might already have my award for greatest rookie during the regular split prepared and ready,
Yeah.
but that doesn't matter. Kassin had a very, very strong showing. Chris Gaming Act 7-7. There are kind of 1-1 team. We normally have one team that does it. It took Chris Gaming Act a little bit to get back on it after week 4 mild catastrophe that went on, but they were able to rally it back, have a few 1-1 weeks and going 1-1, 2-2, I guess technically during Super Week, and then picking up and getting a 2-0 to end it. Crest Gaming looks solid, lads.
Yeah, I've been enjoying Kassim playing. Like again, he's
I mean,
fun. He's aggressive. He's a bit of a battle ward. He also sometimes decides not to run flash against a Leona on Karthus.
Yeah,
into tier 1 turrets is a Shinzao at level 3. But
CJ deserved
stuff
playoffs,
there.
but like also they've tilted
Agreed.
Greyheart off of our casts now. Like, yeah, like they are a team which is super
That's also
fun to
partly
watch.
Nation specifically.
Boy.
Well, freaking Kassin just like not taking Flash into Leona as Karthus. I'm just sat there like, oh my gosh, this guy's got a Death Wish, and he did have Death Wish, kind of fitting the character, I suppose. But yeah, I think CJ definitely deserve playoffs. I think they have a non-zero upset potential chance. I don't think it's likely, but actually they only finished one game behind Sengoku in V3, all things said and done somehow. The saddest thing for me about this roster is that where was Kassin last year? Imagine that 2020 CGA roster with Kassin. Actually, that's title contender at that point, and they nearly were, actually, even without that.
But how much of that is just Aria buff?
Exactly. Yeah, there is that, right? But then like Aria and Gango with Kassin on that team, that would be... I mean, the thing is, like, I actually, even now those players have departed, CJ play a similar style of, they sometimes let the early game go, and then they just come alive in the mid to late game team fights.
Yeah.
Like, Alchemy and Nap have had some stellar games.
They're such good team fighters.
They have also had some snooze fests and some absolutely diabolically awful decisions around, you know, particularly like, you know, game losing Barons and whatever. But like, they nearly beat V3. I actually think that
they nearly beat DFM.
Yeah, they nearly beat DFM. So I look at this team and I'm like, yes, there's a lot to work on, and they're particularly unwise around certain parts of the map, but they're not without hope. And like, get them into an even mid game state, and they'll take it to you.
I mean, I would argue that this is partly Q, their coach, their head coach that has been a part
It
of them.
seems like they've retained that playstyle if he's part
like
of
he's
that.
played
Oh, yeah.
top lane for them back in 2017.
Wow,
he
okay,
then went to become their support for 7 months, and then has gone on to be their head coach since then. Like, this is a guy that has been a professional, and then I think what we've identified is like their playstyle. That's all this guy knows. So that's all this team will play, and it almost got them a title, or at least into the shot of at least competing and putting their name in that hat.
Yeah. I mean, look at this roster and you go, okay, there's a lot of mercurial talent on here. Nap is a phenomenal weak side player and a great, great team fighter. Like, if you can get him into a team fight, his teleports and his ability to just get into the backline and be an ridiculously dangerous disruptor on the things of like Gragas and Renekton makes him a threat. And you've got this kind of power duo of Kassin and Nation. Nation, this split, has been the second best mid laner in the league, in my opinion. He has been really, 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 really damn good. Like, he has basically been just behind Aria in like every stat you care to mention. Kills, assists, CS per minute, DPM, damage percentage. Like, he's done so much work, and basically if they're winning, it's often because Nation has been a monster. Backed up by Kassin, also making really big plays and being a battle ward and doing good stuff as well. That's what makes this team so exciting, but it also makes them really obvious to shut down. Like, if you can make Nation have a bad game, or you can get Kassin on a pick where you just, like, let him into you and you put him in the dirt, they suddenly look a lot less dangerous. But it makes them hard to count out because they do have players who can just single-handedly take a game by the scruff of the neck and just run over it.
I think that's an interesting point you raise up around Nation. I mean, Crest Gaming Act honestly really impressed me. Nap retained their performance, still played very weak side, very confidently, was still coming out on top in some occasions when he was against maybe a worse top laner and was able to kind of exploit a strategy or something that Nap is typically very used to having to do because the man is left alone almost all the time, though Kassin did occasionally pay him a visit up in this top lane.
Yeah, this split's been a tad different, but...
I would also be well, I'm rather happy that Milan and Alchemy, they kind of felt like they figured out some form of system that worked for them. They weren't always brilliant, and I think it was still a step down from where they were last
Yeah.
split, well, for Chris Gaming Act at least, but that's kind of because of the talent that they lost. Gango was the most aggressive mid bot laner, but he would also just flip a coin and take the kind of Alchemy out of the equation and be like, I will win this or lose this, and we will just figure it out there. Milan is slowly coming into their playstyle, and this is his first split, so wasn't awful from them. 2 rookies on this team, and this is that they get 7 and 7. Something's working on this team.
Yeah, I think so. I think it helps that the veterans have pulled their weight. Honestly, I think Nap and Nation have been pretty good this split. Alchemy, a little bit more suspect in lane, but yeah, exactly. He's also with Milan, who's still getting there, getting the ropes. But they both team fought pretty well, and like this team definitely has talent. It's got options. I think it's still a little bit raw to push too far in playoffs, though.
What about you, Nymaera?
I think they have upset potential in the first round. I think that they can genuinely be. I think they can genuinely be one of those 2 upper teams. I think it's more likely for them to fall out 3-1. I think that having those rookies in playoffs is going to
always hurts.
It's going to yeah, it does hurt. It's going to hurt them. They do lack that ability to play around the bot side of the map. I think if the meta changes even remotely to doing that even more so, I think that's pretty, because I mean we've even seen stuff like Caitlyn and Callista coming out of the bot side. That's going to suck for them. And Nap is not necessarily the best player at playing around heavy focus top side for himself. So I think that they're a little bit of a unbalanced team in terms of like that they're not really like they don't really have like a top heavy side or a bottom heavy side to it, whereas last year they had that. But I think that they have the team fighting instincts to get away with somewhat met early games and then team fight their way back into contention. Question is, of course, what they prep coming into playoffs. I have some hope for this team. Not massive as, but I have hope.
I mean, I do think it is important whichever team gets picked in the first round. I mean, I feel awkward for both these bot 2 teams. I mean, I think the Hawks are going to get a really short end of the stick because the winning team out of this tiebreaker match will just pick the Hawks by default. They'll just go, Hawks, you get a day to prepare, and we've already been preparing for you for weeks, and good luck. And then the other team, I do think Chris Gaming Act versus whoever the loser is, hilariously, I think we'll actually get a pretty easy well, it'll actually be probably the more competitive match than the Hawks versus whomever, which I think is probably what's going to be Saturday's match. We don't know. We're doing this on Wednesday evening in the UK, so we don't know how the match is going to actually pan out tomorrow morning, but we'll have to see how that does return. Gentlemen, what happens if Chris Gaming Act lose? What do we expect to see from them moving into summer? Do we want to just see a continuing increase? Is this actually a pretty easy one?
Yeah, I think I want to see more consistency out of Kassin in summer, best they can. Take those aggressive instincts and just make them, well, just be a little bit more experienced there. Like I don't hate the aggression on him. I don't hate the picks. I think that's great, and you should be encouraging and make sure the confidence stays. That said, also make sure it comes with a little bit more of those lessons learned, right? That maybe we don't flash under turret at level 3 and then give 2 kills and double buffs over to the enemy Orianna.
Okay. There's at least some options, and consistency is the main takeaway that you want for Chris Gaming Act, yeah?
Yeah.
And laning phase for Milan. That's about it.
Okay. So there we go. So consistency, laning phase for Milan, and Nation, I want you to carry even harder because that's the shoes you have to fill. I mean, hey, you picked the big shoes. You agreed to this job. You got to do it. Still 7 and 7, only 1 game behind both Sengoku Gaming and V3 Esports. And gentlemen, we need to talk about V3 Esports because Sengoku, we're going to be attacking this from a very different perspective. V3 Esports, gentlemen, oh God, what happened with V3 Esports towards the end of this split? They started just losing games to anyone that was above them or equal to them at the standings, and they could just punch down, but they had no ability to punch up. They didn't even look competitive in some of their matches.
Yeah, they're 0-2 versus DFM, 0-2 versus Rascal Jester, and they're 1-1 versus Sengoku. So they've taken 1 game off of a team that is equal or above them.
And that was Sengoku in the first rotation. They got the win, not the second round.
So I look at V3 and they are prime pickings to upset for... I mean, I actually think that Sengoku put V3. I think they just take the Hawks. They're just like, well, yeah, they're the easy matchup. And then I think there's actually there's a decent chance that V3 actually get beaten by CGA in a best of 5.
Yeah.
They're currently on a 3-loss
Maybe.
streak. I think that Sam. We had a conversation about this. I'm trying to remember if it was in the last podcast or it might have been just like between breaks and stuff. It feels like V3 have been caught up to. It's the big thing. I think that they open up the split wide champion pools, understanding where to play around the map, what their win conditions are, and stuff like Ivor on top. That was fun. And they've now felt
a long time since that.
And now they felt very constrained. They don't understand what their team comps do at certain points in the game, and they're losing the information war in some ways that teams have been doing. They're giving up vision too easily. They're not putting it down aggressively enough, and that's stunting their ability to play around the map. Particularly, I think Cog has fallen off in the last half of the split, and he was punished very, very hard versus Sengoku.
Yes. I think that's a really good way to call it. I think they have been caught up to. I think they were, at the beginning of the split, a bit more creative than other teams. And then on top of that, they were just better at playing around the map with good players. Like, there's a lot of experience on this roster, and it showed. And it meant they could run rings around some of these teams that were still getting to grips with how the game was supposed to be played this split, right? And that's not really the case as much anymore. And against teams who are better, they aren't necessarily winning all the mechanical matchups, and sometimes they are getting caught up thinking they have advantages they don't. I think the most egregious one was probably that one versus Sengoku, where Cog had a ward in the enemy jungle that timed out, that allowed Udyr to get in over a blast plant and kill him, and he died like 5 times in that game, and it was pretty awful.
Yeah, 0-5-0, I think it was.
It was just one of those ones where like it was a little bit sad to watch. And I think
it was sad to cast. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and I mean, what? I'm trying to think what more there is super to add. I think
that's the point, right? V3 Esports looked like potentially they were retaining the stature that we were expecting from all of them, because we all put them in our standings, predicting for them individually. We all put them at second. I checked over this before the end of before we came into this podcast. We all put them at second place. We all thought they'd at least be a contender for the Juggernaut match, and then maybe something else could happen, or we could see maybe a third place team maybe find something. And I think we were bang on the money at the very beginning. And then I think you're exactly right, lads. I think they got caught up. But then I would argue, I think they retained their performance from summer, like a part of the high that they had from Reiner and from Ace. And then that petered out. Muujin looked good,
I think he's still
but he's not Boogie. He's not Boogie.
Yeah. I think sometimes we've also seen Muujin has sometimes like got caught between two things he needs to do, which is sometimes like, I need to support my lanes, but I also want to farm, and he's kind of halfway housed rather than sticking to one of his guns. Whereas someone like Crash actually has been very efficient about saying, I'll just turn up for the counter gank for like 10 seconds, get something for it, and then head back to my jungle, which hasn't been quite as efficient for Muujin in later weeks. There's still that one Nidalee game versus Axes where he just... It was beautiful.
But that's one of the bottom teams. That's not one of the top teams, is it?
Exactly.
So, like, that goes on the whole point of punching down, but can't look up.
So Sengoku and V3 have had like opposite trajectories to me, and normally when I look at Sengoku, I'm like, this is going to be like some real individual aggressive talent trying to mesh together. They might like come together and have strong individual performances at first, and then fall off as they struggle to mesh together with the aggressiveness. Whereas V3, they're a team that like needs a bit of time to gel, because they're probably going to be playing the same style, and they need to like see if they can build up their synergy and get towards that the later part of the split, much like V3 had to in spring and summer for themselves. It's kind of been the opposite. V3 somehow kept a lot of that chemistry from summer, had a really good start to the split, and they've failed to make it stick. And I think a lot of that is because they don't have the confident playmaking in Boogie and Archer, where they just kind of like Boogie, Archer, and Reiner just forgot how to lose in summer. They just forgot how to lose. They always had a finger on the pulse of the game, and like they were really good. Even when they just outdrafted themselves, they somehow kept themselves in the game. And yeah, they lost a couple of games, right? They went 12-2. They lost one against Sengoku, one against DFM, right? Something like that. Oh no, one against CGA, one against Sengoku. That was it. Both really fun games.
Right. Yeah.
So I think there's probably two things I kind of think also might be a little bit of something that V3 need to look at is Hollow and Reiner have been punished a lot, particularly in that last week. Against DFM, Utapon and Gang ran a clinic against Hollow and Reiner. It was a little bit tough to watch. The Tristana Rel combo down towards that bot lane was tough. Muujin went 0-5-1 on the last pick. I can do this. Nunu, that's the one I was going Willip, and I was like, that's the other person attached
that
to it.
was such a
Yeah,
weird
and then
fucking
like Utapon went 10-1-3 on the Tristana. Rhino went 0-6-2. He like face check a bush trying to work out what was going on. Then again, they went into Burning Core and lost to Burning Core after Yuhi and Prowl did a number on them bot lane as well. Like, that was a bit problematic. And then you go back to, say, week 6, and you're looking over and you're saying,
But like no, I think that's a perfect place, honestly, and Sam. Like week 7, the fact that they lost in such bad fashion to first Detonation Focus Me in a 25-minute stomp, because that's what it was.
It was
and
brutal.
then the fact they just got out macroed and microed in a game against Burning Core, who have looked fucking awful, to say the least. Like a team that has looked bad, that should have got, like, Burning Core should have gone 3-11. They should be on the same record as Axis. The fact that they were able to beat V3 Esports to keep their dream alive, and the fact that Burning Core then lose to the Hawks to basically eliminate that, and it's not going to happen anymore. But that Burning Core beat V3, like, coming into this, I think you're right, Nymaera. CGA could easily upset, and I have no hope for V3 Esports, by the way, winning this tiebreaker match. Like, I just don't expect that to happen.
Like,
at the end of the day, like, they do have the parts which have succeeded at parts display. We've seen the proof of concept, which could
It's been so long since we've seen it
miraculously all switch on, right? But like, so I think the tiebreaker match we'll see. Problem is, if they lose in the first round match is them. I don't know if they'll have enough prep time to come in as confident as they'll need to. Because I think with prep time, V3 they're very cerebral players. And also coming into Super Week and stuff like that, it can suck. It can suck. It's very, very harsh schedule.
Yeah.
If they're first round, there's a chance that they lose tiebreaker into losing first round.
Yeah. Like, I also just need to keep a little bit of an eye on, like, there's a couple games in a row where they have effectively given counter pick over to Mujin for some weird jungle picks. I'm thinking of the Kindred into the Skarner versus the Jesters.
Yeah.
That, like, they got a 4K gold lead and then just couldn't team fight because they didn't have the front to back because the team got the team draft. Then they draft the Nunu into Steel's Hecarim, and they just get in. They just lose the one. They lose the, and Hecarim keeps Nunu out of the bot lane when he's trying to hyper gank, and basically Steel says, "I know what my win condition is, and it's keeping you out of my lanes." And then the lanes for DFM crush it because Gang is a monster on Rel. It turns out, what a surprise!
What a surprise!
And it's these kind of things. I'm saying a couple things where there have been a few games in the last few weeks where V3 have been outthought a little bit in draft, and then kind of also had their win conditions taken away from them, and they haven't found a way to get back to them. Like, particularly if you could
just being like, I mean, I hate to I hate to sound like a broken record, but the last time they looked good was week 4 when they beat Chris Gaming Act and the Hawks. Like, that's not a big hill to stand on when you're beating the teams that are below you. Like, I'm sorry, I don't see the magic that I saw from summer V3 or even spring V3. Like, this roster just hasn't come online to me, and I wonder if maybe it can come online in summer. I just don't think spring's close enough.
Yeah, I think they'd be more punishable for sure. I agree. I don't think they're a bad team. Don't get me wrong, and we're making it sound like potentially they are. But the thing is, the last few weeks have pointed out some quite serious flaws, and I think
that's just where we're at.
Yeah, that's just where we're at.
Yeah, Nymaera, any last thoughts about V3 Sports? Or do you think we've covered it?
I think we covered it pretty well. I think it is like, it's now basically seeing how their prep works. We know that DFM have been a team historically good at that. V3 are a cerebral team. I think that there's a chance they turn it around, but like, yeah, there's a chance they get slapped in first round and get punted out of playoffs. There's a chance. Maybe.
Well, let's talk about our last team that we're going to go into any form of real depth with, because our last two teams will be probably getting a whole, well, actually, no, will be getting a whole podcast episode devoted to just their match, let alone how these teams got here. But we will briefly cover how each of those two teams got here. Let's talk about Sengoku Gaming. First things first, though. Sengoku Gaming had a pretty decent performance. They went 4-2 over the last 3 weeks, obviously Super Week and Week 7. They beat Burning Core, V3, Hawks, and Rascal Jester. So there's some diversity between top teams and mid teams, and bot team, sadly, for Burning Core. They did lose to Chris Gaming Act, but that was definitely a game we're going to talk about. And they also lost to Detonation Focus Me, which, I mean, that's DFM. and they are well and truly have cemented themselves as one of the best teams in the LJ at the moment. So I'm not gonna slaughter them for that one. Sengoku Gaming, they at least have turned on their engines, because I remember 2 weeks into this podcast, we were like, we called it, Sengoku suck, and then actually they turned out all right at the end.
Yeah. I will say for Sengoku, they've basically had an inverted run from V3. I think they've gone 6-2 since week 4.
Yes.
Like they've had a great run, and like a lot of it has been off things like Gango and Enti in lane have been so damn good. I threw some Aphelios stats when I was producing for a game, when I gave them over to you guys when you were casting, and like those stats are just nasty, actually nasty. And like there's a few people on Sengoku who go, Crash is online, Ramane's kind of found something of a place in the team. I don't think he's a big carry, and I think potentially his lack of participation in things is sometimes a bit of a problem, but the side lanes have looked pretty good for Sengoku Gaming. The bot lane has been phenomenal for Sengoku Gaming, and I'm fairly excited to see what these guys can do with their kind of ability to play to either side lane.
Yeah, I think that, particularly for Sengoku, of course, we talked about Super Week in terms of them kind of showing a bit more of a diverse playstyle. I think the fact that Gango can play stuff like Senna has been really interesting to see, still doing well in lane, showing a respect in lane, which didn't really see from 2020 Gango. So I look at this team and like, yeah, they are more diverse than in terms of playstyle than I would have expected. I mean, losing to CJ in the fashion that they did, getting out team fought kind of in the late game, there were some issues I had with that, particularly because I think that we saw a lot of teams kind of like failing to play around inconsistent frontline around Meganar and stuff, because it's always a little bit.
I think Sengoku versus Chris Gaming Act is slightly more of a bigger thing. It's kind of just the rivalry of the two teams. Sengoku Gaming just can't beat Chris Gaming Act historically. There are 3-11 historic. Like, Chris Gaming Act have gone 2-0. It's the only team that Sengoku weren't able to beat, and I think that's partly Kyo, the head coach. Just understand, they're just like, our way of playing the game beats how Sengoku likes to play the game. We can't do anything else. Detonation Focus Me can beat us 2-0, but we'll beat Sengoku Gaming. And guess what? They continued that run even when they had Blank Imperium. So
but hilariously, Gango has been on like both sides of that now, because like,
I know, it's kind of hilarious.
Beating Sengoku on CGA, and then now he's just lost them. But like, I think that the most of that game versus CJ was hugely in their favor. I have some worries about Paz in terms of like when he's playing something like Camille and they can like slowly eke out advantages on side lane, Sengoku could look good with that. But like playing around Meganar, it's been hit and miss. Early game they've managed to make it work. Late game, like I said, in this game in particular, they kind of struggled with it. But most of Sengoku is a good news story, right? I think that again, this bot lane is disgustingly good now that NT's online. And I think
it took him a while, but he's definitely there now.
Yeah, because I've again, I've not always been convinced by NT in 2020, right? But credit to him, he showed up again, somehow again. And now I look at this and I'm like, oh man, if we get ourselves like a second round matchup of like Sengoku v3, I'm super looking forward to that. That should be such a good best of 5.
I know. I'll also say, I think, the fact that Sengoku, the bit that when I said, okay, Sengoku are actually here in a genuine, can throw their name in the ring, is what I will say. The moment I said, okay, you have got the right to throw your name in the ring, is when they put up that really, really good game versus DFM, where it was back and forth. And yes, DFM still won it and looked pretty good doing so. But Sengoku made them fight for it. It was tense. There was skirmishes across the map. Paz had gone Ignite, Teleport, Camille, and got a solo kill onto Ebby. And Ebby turns it around later on the set because, it's Ebby. And like Udapon on the Tristana versus Gango's Kalista. Like, there was some good stuff going on there. I was like, okay, you guys are competitive and willing to step up to the plate to fight against some of these teams and don't just let them walk over you. And did so well. And Crash, again, I think is a phenomenal counter ganker. I think he just knows where to be to make the other jungler's day feel really sad.
I completely agree with you there. I think that's just it, right? Crash has come online. Sengoku have come online, right? I think that's just the kind of whole narrative point that we've got for Sengoku Gaming in this. They remember week 3, they beat Burning Core but lost to Axis. And then since that week 3, they've gone on to beat everybody in the league except for Chris Gaming Act, who just apparently have their number. And they were beating Definition Focus Me and all this kind of stuff. Rascal Jester, V3, like, they look good.
Yeah. I'll add, I have one caveat, and that is I don't think Sengoku have done a very good job about integrating how they want to play around Ramune. He's just not involved with a huge amount. Like, he's
I
like
don't think
he's
Ramane's good anymore. I've
like
said this before.
He's got the lowest kill participation of any
He's got some
starting
of the
mid laner
worst
in the league.
stats just in general
Like,
for mid laners.
his stats have been. It's
No,
weird.
no, no.
Like,
They're actually really medium.
like
to,
exactly, they're very middle of the road.
Which is not where Sengoku are as a whole. Like, he is the weak point.
So he's very middle of the road with his stats, but the one that's like right down the bottom is his kill participation is at 52%.
Yeah, he's just never with the team.
Which is interesting because I think a part of it is because they're always playing through side lanes, right? Like,
Agreed.
every time they're hard focusing side lanes. But it also suggests to me that I don't think they quite know what they want to do with Ramune as a team.
That's why I thought when they finally picked up Syndra, it was pretty big for him, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But then it's like, but then I'm like, well, Syndra's not
that
actually...
game with Syndra,
but then I'm like, also like, I'm actually not convinced Syndra's a great champion. I think that Syndra is like really struggling. Like, if you have a Scion in the game, Syndra just doesn't exist because you have to play against the Scion frontline. It's like, okay, well, whatever. Occasionally you can do
Verdant Barriers all made her really sad.
And against Verdant Barrier, that absolutely sucks for them. And also you're playing into hyper engage, similar problems that we're saying to Zoe and whatever. Like, I mean, it's a problem for all control mages, but Syndra just doesn't bring as much value for being as vulnerable as they are.
She has less utility, right? Yeah. Like, so yeah, it's not like I think Ramune has been bad. Like, some of his individual, particularly as they kind of Sengoku came online, he's not been a liability anymore. But my issue really has been, what's his role in the team right now? And
I
don't know. He feels a bit like a placeholder right now. That's my one serious issue with them.
This is my problem. I think a lot of LJL mids have had the same problem because there's no LeBlanc in meta. No LeBlanc, no Zoe to like prop up their kind of kill participation and like have decent laning phase. Because like you've got players like Gadiadu, Megamin, and now Ramune as well. And Dash is also up there too, where they kind of sat like, man, I wish I could have more playmaking, and there's only one Azir in the game. Because Azir kind of like patches over that in terms of you're a control mage whilst also having the team fight prowess in terms of like your own mobility and you know, other stuff like that. And then again, like there's also a Seraphine being floated around too, but you know, not every team has managed to play that well in the mid lane. So yes, I think Ramune needs to find some more picks which he's more comfortable on. I think the Syndra was papered over some cracks. I think the Azir's papered over some cracks, but I mean he's 3-0 on the Azir, but I don't think that's because of him.
Yeah, and I mean, I also think if you're going to play something like a Syndra, you need to play like Rascal Jesters. Like that's just the fact. Like, Recap has looked really strong on his Syndra. He's got 100% win rate on it, and those games have looked very decisive, honestly. And if they haven't been decisive, he's been able to work around his team and kind of follow along. I mean, Chris Gaming Act have that exact same thing with Nation. They play around him. They have Lucian, Victor. They can play different kind of styles. They have that Rumble as well. Like, these are an Ace can still play set, remember, mid whenever you ask him to. He can play his Galio. Like, what you've identified, Nymaera, is obviously the fact that so many of the other mid lanes that aren't experiencing these problems, they can play other shit.
And teams
there are
that
just
aren't
four
experiencing
of them that can't do that.
Because it's kind of like the give and take of the team in terms of like what the team is willing to give you or what you're willing to give the team. Right.
Exactly.
I mean, to your point, Lexi, as well. Like, just before Nymaera continues on, like to your point, you're saying, okay, you got to play like Rascal Jesters do. Recap has the highest kill participation of any mid laner in the league, by the way, as a contrast. And like that's kind of the deal with something like a Syndra. Like exactly. Like if you're right, and that's my like it is like good 25% higher. 25% higher. That is a significant percentage higher. And like if you're gonna play something like Syndra, you have to roam to come up with like to get to round plays. Use that teleport, and are they doing it right now?
Or like go for the dives. Syndra's actually a really good diving champion.
Yeah,
have
big
those
time.
Unoutplayable like QRE.
Press R and walk away.
QRE, instant stun, loads of damage. That's what you use, right? You snowball. Like heck, even players like Knight in the LPL can't really make Syndra work as well as they would like to right now. Anyway, enough about
and just because Recap played one game of Zillion doesn't mean everyone needs to become their Bjorkson player, all right? That's not what we're meaning by
pretty good right now too.
Don't say that, or Bjorkson's coming out of retirement, and I can't be dealing with my heart having that now.
There are a couple. I mean, I would be really interested to see if teams are ballsy enough to pick up Kassadin in the next on playoff stuff like that. But like I like Ramune is an old assassin player. There's a chance. Anyway,
can we get more Karma mid?
Oh, I hate Karma
At
mid
the
so
minute,
much.
it's probably likely, actually, looking at where the buffs are
gosh.
coming. I suspect possible.
Seraphine
Definitely
keeps getting
flexible.
hit, so everyone moves back to Karma.
Karma mid is just like the least interactive champion ever in laning phase. Like
Oh,
even
for
like,
sure. We're in the control mage meta. Nothing happens at the moment.
But
If we're
Karma is even worse than control mages.
No, because Karma never sits in lane. She farms lane and walks off.
No, she just clears and then shields whenever you trade back. It's the worst thing
No,
ever.
because you don't. You just start doing other stuff. The way to beat Karma is you don't play into Karma. You don't do the strategy.
gosh.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I
we
mean,
watched the masterclass on this from Ace, just playing Karma mid every time.
Yeah, no, I mean,
And
like,
playing for Boogie.
I mean, we're still gonna see Orianna for absolutely forever.
Oh, of
I mean,
course, yeah.
by
Anna's
the
there.
way, I've been hearing that like Kane mid is apparently okay. I just throwing it out there. Just heard that from one or two people. There's a chance.
Great. So now, and now Ari is also a legitimate pick as well because of humanoid.
Oh god,
You
well,
ready
we'll
for
see.
that one?
We'll see about that. I mean,
No, I don't. I mean, I think
so look, Ramune plays Ari and played it last year, but like it made it look like a dog, not a fox. Okay, no, okay, no, dogs are great. I like dogs, but like, made it look not very useful. And I'm kind of sad. I'm like, sure, maybe it'll get you more kill participation because at least you can dash 3 times to hit a target.
You can dash to set up your Everfrost.
Sure.
so. I mean, that's going to be Sengoku Gaming, gentlemen. Sengoku Gaming have
Bit of
looked like one
attention.
of the slightly better teams in the league, but
for sure.
they are still got to play their tiebreaker match. We are recording this, and you will be hearing this one after the tiebreaker match. So, what are our predictions, gentlemen? I've got Sengoku Gaming. I think that was rather clear from the
do
very
too.
beginning of how I do that. You have gone for that too. And Nymaera, who are you with?
I think I'm going for Sengoku.
Okay, 3 for 3.
Yeah,
All right.
I mean, it's kind of hard to bet against them right now, particularly when V3 has problems they need to solve. Whereas Sengoku, I think they've come in looking pretty hot, even with that loss in last week. I think they're looking all right.
So now we're going to move over to the very end of this podcast. We have got a question from the lovely TSD Stardust. But before we get on to that, we must briefly talk about and congratulate, more than anything else, Rascal Jesters and Sent and Detonation Focus Me. Like, they made it all the way to the distance. They've got the Juggernaut match. And these were two teams that, well, one of them surprised us and one of them well and truly lived up to expectations. They could have had an extra win under their belt. I'm 99% sure of that. But they decided to play their other roster. So, hey, whatever. I'm not going to look at that one. But Rascal Jesters, they surprised us, gentlemen.
They did. I have been so excited to watch this team as they've grown and come into their own. Part of it is the fact that they have been one of the most creative teams in drafts, pulling out things like Kane has been really, really fun and giving Hatchemetcha a little bit more agency to play the way they want. And on top of that all, they have had the likes of Sol and Secret really find their stride. Sol has been actually monstrous. Actually monstrous. His his DPM was close to the best in the world for a while. It still is up there. I think he's at something like 745 or DPM, which is
Something
an
like
eyebrow
that, yeah.
raiser, whatever league you're in. Like, this guy has been phenomenal on pretty much every champion.
And I just expect to see more of that. I mean, let's be real. Not only Soul has been doing that, Secret has been backing him up so masterfully. And that partly comes through the fact that this was a Korean, like, triple threat. It's not just the bot lane, it's also the head coach coming in going, this is what we're doing. But then, guys, they got in a rookie from Scouting Grounds and it's worked out well. Nymaera, what's going on with that?
I mean, I didn't expect them to do as well as they did. Being again, just reiterating the point.
Either. And I
mean,
Scouting Grounds.
I think a large part of it is kind of like coming in with a shared philosophy. It's a huge thing. I thought that was going to be the case with Sengoku. It took them a while to figure that. Again, I was like, oh, they look at their identities. Maybe they'll end up being pretty good. And Rascal Jester, I didn't put much stock in their bot lane because I thought, it'd be all right. I thought it'd be pretty strong. Didn't expect them to be this strong, being, players on Spanu or Kongju Monster. Like, these kind of teams where I'm like, yeah, they're not A-list celebrities from the Korean leagues. They're not. And heck, even when Blank came in, he didn't always end up like having the best games over here either, right? So like looking at this, I think that particularly having Kanatu in this top side be such a revelation, that was a huge step up for me. I thought he was going to get dumpstered by like Nap, Afim, Ebby, and he's actually been
really good.
He's been much better. Look, he's not been the solo carry. He's been a role player for the team, but he's been more than enough to get this team into contention. I think that in a macro style, this team has been absolutely on point. And I think that they've had a really good read on the meta. There's a lot of things I hope that there aren't so many fair weather fans of this team. Like if the meta changes and they fall off, like they kind of go away from it. Because I think this team is well worthy of support. There's a lot of different players in this team which are really cool. Having this trio of like Vikal, their coach, and then Hatchemetra and was it Soul and Secret both coming at the same time? Like having that
Yeah.
trio move into the team with Hatchemetra, it's been really good for them.
Yeah, I mean, the Vikal's the guy I want to call out particularly. I mean, this guy has been basically came in and says, just let me to pick up a Korean bot lane. Let me pick, and we'll go from there. He chose Sol and Secret, which in hindsight, especially because I had some hope for them. I know you guys were like a bit washed up. LCK bot lane, you sure about these guys? They've really had a bit of a resurgence down here. But this guy, as a reminder, I think we've mentioned it on broadcast, but I think it's worth reiterating here. Vikal has quite the resume, quite the CV when it comes to teams he's coached.
He does,
here's a few of them. He's coached for KT Rolster. He's coached for Starhorn Royal Club, which you might remember was the team that had Uzi on. He's coached for RNG, which you might remember is the team with Uzi on. He's coached for Top Sports, who are now Top Esports, which you might remember for the likes of Jackie Love and Knight and Karsa and crew. And there's some few others supermassive over in the Turkish league who are one of the best Turkish representatives. They've won pretty much every split over there. He's coached for All Knights, who again have won so many of the Latin America teams as well. Like he's been all over the world and won with most of them. Now he's on Rascal Jesters, and obviously I think it's a little bit of a fall of grace to come out from coaching the likes of KT Rolster and Top Esports and RNG and the likes. But at the same time, like you can see there's something to this guy because he's managed to bring a team of washed up veterans, inverted commas, and a rookie and get them here to second place looking good.
I mean, the last team he touched was, as you said, the All Knights, and now their support player is now playing the LCS, and that's Newbie. Like he has got some magic to him, and he can definitely just go, hey, I'm gonna tell you how to play this game my way, and we're gonna start winning, lads. Now don't question the process. And you know another player who's winning a lot at the moment? Recap and Hatchemetra are having an incredible performance. They really are stunning. And this was a player that came out of retirement. Like, what do you want to say about Recap, Nymaera? Because like you're our resident mid laner.
I think he's ended up he's managed to leverage himself in a game far better than most mid laners. You can see that in the kill participation stat. And again, like I like to go with like my analytical thought and then follow up with stats. I mean, like actually, you know, because of this play, it ends up to this. But like he's been playing much the same champions a lot of other people, a lot of Ariana, a lot of Syndra, but it's not like he's necessarily had to stick to those. But particularly when he has been on those, he's ended up moving around with his with Hatchemetra and stuff like that, and just performing much better than most other people, right?
Well, he has the second highest kill participation outside of Ace. But then he's also dying the least amount. He's the third least likely to die mid laner.
I think that
only with Arya and Nation above him.
Yeah, no, I think that Ace again has had a really solid split, and you know, it's worth talking about that from the side of that. But yeah, I think Recap has for slotting back into a team. That's not an easy thing to do. More than surprised me with that actually. Particularly when he was like solo killing Arya, I was like, all right, okay, let's keep our eyes on this guy, and it was absolutely worth doing that.
Yeah.
And let's talk about Hatchemetra just to end us out, and then we're going to move on to Detonation Focus Me very quickly. I mean, Hatchemetra, we thought he was maybe towards the end, the twilight years of his career, and it turned out, nah, he's still good to go. What do we think of that?
Yeah, I've been really impressed. Like, I think he's had a very good read on what he needs to do in a game. Like, sometimes he's just sacked his jungle or sacked what he's doing on the map to get things going elsewhere. He's picked up Jarvan into really nasty farming matchups, all that kind of deal. But he's also been willing to pull out things like Kayn and look for the hard carry. And I think that versatility has really shown through. He's been such a good playmaker for this team. And he's also just been very good, particularly in his early games. He's been really good about setting up the map and then handing over the reins to the likes of Recap and Sol to finish up the games for him. I've been very impressed.
Yeah, I mean, he normally does sacrifice a bit of his pressure, or rather some of the resources that he gets, because he's normally pretty at least 100 to 200 gold. He normally is down on experience gold and CS on average to other junglers, but that's just because he is just facilitating the lanes, either going and making sure Kanatu isn't getting destroyed, or making sure at least he babysits him a little bit, maybe goes to Recap, maybe sacrifices a little bit of himself. But like from where he's come from in summer and spring to now, the sum of the parts are actually far more consistent for him. So he's been able to get away with a lot more, and maybe sacrificing himself a little bit because everybody else makes up for it. So then when he does get online into a game, Everything else is fine. There's no burning buildings in 2 lanes, which is what he was used to. He was like, this is fine. Oh
gosh,
God.
I'm so glad for so many of these players that like Rascal Jester Summer didn't reprise itself. It's so good to see them come back.
Yeah, I just stay away from Volleybet. Like, stay away from Volleybet right now. Wait for the buffs to come through. Volleybet was not a good pick. Like, yeah. I mean, I'm looking over some of the stats. It's like, yeah, there's like some of the stats like look a little bit dicey when you look at them in isolation. But then you look at the he's also played a fair amount of Skarner and Jarvan, and there's that awful Volleybet
There's
game.
actually
like,
a really hilariously fun AP Brawler Volleybet top build with like Halo Blades, Chemtank, and
I've heard of this.
Chemtank Zhonya's. Because like if you go Halo Blades and you have your auto attack reset on your W, you get through to like your passive lightning really quickly, and that's what has an AP scaling, which is pretty good outside of like a lot of other skills. Anyway, fun stuff.
Silly, that's what it is.
I mean, gentlemen, we need to switch over and now start talking about Detonation Focus Me. And I did clickbait the last podcast episode going, Detonation Focus Me, are they the best team? All in caps, exclamation, question mark. I mean, I think it's fine to say at the moment, yeah, if you just look at standings, they are the best team. And even with them switching out their roster a few times and giving a win over to Sengoku, I am still sticking to that side of the story for myself, at least, and I'm allowed to. It's on the podcast. I'm not on broadcast, so I can do this. DFM look just unbeatable.
Terrifying.
Like, realistically, I think they might actually 3-0, 3-0. Like, I honestly, might be going Detonation Focus Me 3-0 for the Juggernaut match, and then blind picking Detonation Focus Me 3-0 in the finals, because the last week was scary from them. For me, at least.
I agree. And the fact is that the fact they could pull in Seros and Gang
with zero stage experience so far.
And zero stage experience, and then have Utapon and Gang just crap on people and have a game where it gets a little bit harder but play to the win condition of having Utapon on the Aphelios is pretty terrifying. And
is it Kerry Katona? I'm going, they're simply the best. No. What is that? Well, who sang that one?
I don't know. I know they're better than all the rest, but
it's Tina Turner. No, Tina. Tina
probably.
Something.
No, is it? Simply the best. I'll Google this. You guys keep talking.
All right.
I've got to find out. It is Tina Turner. It is Tina Turner. You were right. Okay.
I mean, my thoughts are that like, I mean, I look at particularly like their bot lane subbing in. I'm like, yeah, actually, it's kind of worth subbing them in. They looked so clean with their macro. They just like completely put those games to the sword. Like, I mean, sure, they did end up falling behind against the Hawks, right? When it was like, okay, well, Evie's been put up behind a bit. Appaman outplayed on top side, and Steel got caught a bit. Like, I was a little worried for Steel, but it was just the kind of thing where like DFM just knew how to make the game so hard to play into themselves. I was really impressed with Ebby not playing a carry, not playing like a brawler, playing a tank Scion and just being like, I'm going to get relevant. Like, I'm going to get relevant. He's so good at picking up farm where he just shouldn't be. And that's not necessarily because DFM like funneling him farm, because they were still funneling the farm to Utapon. And like, he still just, died in lane, getting pushed around a bit. It just doesn't matter. Like, he became super relevant to Scion. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, this reminds me of when DFM, like, we were worried about them at the end of spring last year. And I was like, oh, don't like really how Seros is playing. Steel's getting picked off, and they just came into playoffs and they just dumpstered everyone.
Couple fun stats
that's
for you here as well. Really. So this is okay. So this is for total DPMs for the entire league and all players. So Soul's at the top. He's done very well. Then you've got Honey again, done very well. They're like the hard carry for their team. Makes sense. Then you're looking down. Then it's Utapon. Then it's Nation. Then it's Ebby and Arya. Like 3 players from the same team in the top 5 or so. Have got the highest DPMs in the league. They carry through every role simultaneously, or every lane simultaneously. It's a little silly. Like, Ebby, as a top laner playing things like Scion, has 505 DPM. Like,
wait, what?
That's nuts. Like, these guys have basically said, we will run over you through every single lane and just put out massive amounts more damage than every other team.
It's kind of disgusting how far they get.
I mean, I do think that, I do think there is a ceiling to this team with either of these rosters. We saw that. Well, I mean, we didn't see DFM internationally with that roster when they were on form back in spring, right? But like, we kind of know the roster of that team. We've seen it internationally before. At least they've got Arya helping out in the background. And if they do go with the legacy roster, but then like Kazu in the main roster, if they do go for that, like, I think there's a ceiling to it. I think that ceiling's enough for the LJL. The question for me is now basically what happens to MSI. So that's why I'm like, actually, look, I think you basically take the loss at MSI, use it as a learning experience, and just say, look,
There's a good chance they'll
whatever.
go 0-6. There is a good chance
Yeah,
they will
I reckon
go
they'll pick
0-6,
up one game,
and then...
1 or 2 in group stage. They'll come as the lowest seed in the groups anyway. I think then you use that, get your full roster together for summer, sweep the LJL, just crush it, make it your...
Oh, yeah, no, I
thing.
think this is a 14-0 one if they want to go for
I think
if they want to do it, they
summer
could.
split with when you have gang in, that's the time to like become legendary. And at that point, that's when Worlds becomes something. I mean, I still think that DFM currently looking like the best team in the region. I think that Ebby really showed up again. Like, it's just, yeah. They're just very hard to put down. You can never bet against them. Not really. Not realistically.
Agreed.
Even last split when we were betting against them in summer, they damn near won the split. And like, yeah, we had like genuine concerns about them. It's like, oh no, now they get to prep going into playoffs. Oh, that's awful for the LJL.
Oh, so bad. I mean, Sam, closing thought for DR Nation pokes me from you as well.
I think they should be a lock for finals, probably, one way or another.
I think that's safe.
If there were a team that could beat them, I think it is Rascal Jester, because you could see that DFM switched in the Seros and Gang roster partly because they were a little afraid about what Sol and Secret could do to them, and rightly so.
Question then, do you think there are any other team that could actually beat us DFM in a series right now outside of DFM, either of you? I don't think there is a team.
In a series, no.
Because I don't think percentage-wise,
I think in a series, having the ability to switch between the two rosters, if something is like a failing point on the map, that's disgusting. Obviously, you can't do that at MSI. You can only bring one substitute, which is again why I think DFM will maybe struggle at MSI. But like, because remember, like season 5 SKT, they were doing this stuff too, right? They kind of pioneered that style. This could be quite similar to that.
I'll be honest. I think if they go to MSI, they should take Arya and Kazu. Give Kazu the token ticket of going, hey, this is your time to play on stage. You didn't get a lot of internet. I don't
but
actually
you
think
need Arya to not be international rookie at Worlds, because that's the one thing which could screw this team.
Exactly.
Because if Arya falls apart
there, you throw the team to the side. I think you just let Arya get 5 or 6 games under his belt. You just give Kazu and say, hey, here's your time where you get to play on stage. I can't remember if he's played international or not. I don't think he had when I did look over his match history, but I could be wrong about that one. Not Worlds, definitely not. If it was anything, it was MSI. He might have gone to one of the special ones that they used to do, like All Stars or something stupid like that. Oh, whatever. Doesn't matter. But I think you throw it in the current roster. You say, old roster, you're done. We don't care about Gang because Gang can just get games. He's already played at like 2 MSIs and 2 Worlds, I think, or something, or 1 World and 2 MSI. So fuck that. It doesn't matter at that point. You throw Arya in, you get him that experience, like you were saying, Nymaera, and then you just run hard at Worlds. You just cannonball in it and go for play-ins because we just want them to get out of play-ins. That's what we want. Just in groups, and then suddenly the LJL is not the worst team now in international performances because that's what we want first. Let's get that one. Let's get that monkey off our back, and then we can figure something else out.
He played in the season 15 international wildcard. Season 5 international wildcard tournament.
Yes,
and
I knew there was something stupid.
Yes, that would have been. Yes, that was with Initia1ise as well. That would have been with Astorore is the jungler. Yeah. Okay, so he's played in like some stuff back in season 5, and that was when it wasn't technically like the full event. It was like a separate tournament from.
It was a separate thing, yeah. So technically he's been to Worlds, technically not because it was a different system. Yeah. But I mean, hey,
no major competition.
Yeah, I think you give Kazu the golden ticket and say, here you go, buddy. Good job for doing what we need you to do for this one.
It's
That's
the
reward.
time chamber where you get beat down on for Arya and just say, like, look, learn how to lane against some of the best in the world. You get some major region matches.
Get a bunch of scrims in as well.
Exactly. I mean, the other thing is, they would still have to bring Gang along.
Oh, 100%.
Basically, because it's actually it's mandated in the rules. There is a 7th player if you've got 3 residents, 2 non-residents and your substitute is a non-resident. You have to bring a 7th in case there's a situation where you would end up with 3 non-residents on your team. Because
so we take both Seros and Gang in case
exactly. So Gang would be the substitute, and then basically Seros is the 7th man. Is the way it works.
Right.
Is how that is.
So if Kazu fell ill or Arya fell ill, both would be forced to switch out, and they have to do the other, but only deciding
something
on
like that,
what roster. But they'll have to submit a roster that they'll want to play, and that will be the one they're locked into.
This is all assuming that DFM even makes it. But,
exactly.
That's like our
we are jumping the gun a little here.
Of
Yeah.
course, but like
Like-
this is the part of the show where we can do
Yes,
that. And
exactly.
gentlemen, more than anything else, actually, let's jump into our question that we got from TSD Stardust. You can ask us questions over on our podcast Discord, or if you have any questions that burst into your mind at the middle of the night and you're thinking, I wonder what the LJL guys might think of this, you can DM us on Twitter and we will definitely respond to you either on Twitter or even on the podcast.
You know it.
Gentlemen, TSD Stardust asked us, and I think that we've kind of answered his question here. They go, which team do you think will fare better at playoffs? I think it's fair to say that we're all DFM, right?
The versatility in a best of 5 is huge. I'm trying to think, because effectively for me, there's things which do well in best of 5 is ability to adapt, and that often comes from good coaching / macro sensibilities, and then also huge champion pools and stuff like that. Having the ability to switch in 2 different members for DFM, that's huge. If something starts failing, that's it. You know, DFM just switch out the roster and say, look, we'll just reset the mental, and that's the way to do it. I think that I think that V3 could do better than they did in regular season because they have larger champion pools. But I think actually now that Sengoku have started to be more versatile, I would say Sengoku over V3 just because they're just brute forcing everything. But then you can't just
I'll add on to that playstyle versatility helped as well, like being able to play not just with multiple champions, but multiple champions in different styles.
Basically,
right?
I'm
like,
saying not
say,
Hawks, not CGA, and I think that V3 is a question because I think the mantle might boom.
Yeah, so I think Rascal Jesters will be up there partly because they have shown so many different looks, like the ability to play Kane for Hachimecha, and then also just go back towards the Jarvan and Skarma and says, okay, I'll lose out in the farm, but I'll still be a really frustrating pick threat. V3 to an extent as well, with Cog having some interesting choices, even if that's been less successful in later weeks.
I just don't see how any of these things ever overcome Detonation Focus Me, the ability at a single moment that you already mentioned, both of you actually, the fact that Detonation Focus Me, where they're like, let's just force them to play 2 games of Seros. And then the mid laner just goes, oh, fuck, I've not practiced against Ziggs or Heimerdinger because we haven't been playing against Ziggs or Heimerdinger. And then suddenly he just slaps them 2 games in a row, and like it just goes, oh, DFM drafted well. What the game that they drafted horribly in one of the games they lost. They drafted 1 game well with Syros and they stomped. Oh God, what do we do? And you still get gang, right? So now Utapon isn't on training wheels 2v1ing every lane. I know it's a meme against Kazu. I don't mean it, obviously, ladies and gentlemen, but it's the fact that obviously Utapon compared to Kazu is alchemy to gang.
Utapon is like top 3 player in the region. You've got like
really good.
Well, we need to do actually our all stars for the regular split, gentlemen. So like
we'll do that another point.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a good one. I'll start thinking about it.
But like, I mean, he's probably up there for AD carry at least, and
absolutely.
I mean, as is a lot of the members of Detonation Focus Me, definitely rivaling up there and making their statement that they can have a strong performance. I mean, are there anything else you would like to say out there to any of our listeners and fans? I'm going to go over to you, Nymaera, first, as you look like you're ready and willing and able, and not Gable, because that's an old WWE wrestling team from NXT. Anyway, you go ahead.
Come watch us in playoffs.
Initia1ise?
Yeah. Anything final? I think just watch us in playoffs. It's going to be great playoffs. I am very interested to see how particularly our top 4 perform, because I think there could be some very, very competitive best of 5s, even if I think we're all kind of tipping the likes of DFM come Rascal Jesters to take this to the end.
Well, with that all said, I'm most excited to honestly, we're not going to get to see it for a few weeks, but I really just want to see the Juggernaut match. Like, some things keep you going when you watch a lot of games and you're like, oh man, that one wasn't a good game. I've watched some bad games over this week, ladies and gentlemen. That game is a game I am very excited for, because it might be one of those games where I look back, similar to where I think the Detonation Focus Me Sengoku series that we got all the way back in spring. I keep thinking back to that series because it was such a fun series, and the fact
for
that
me it was Rascal Justice CGA. I'm just like,
such a good series as well. And that's what this playoff system gives us. So brilliant performances. I would love when we were talking to Reed. I'm sorry, gentlemen. I was trying to end the podcast here, but Reed suggested, our producer that has been helping us a lot out with some of our broadcast stuff. He suggested, what happens if LJL just add a losers bracket? If they want to make it this long of a like a playoff system, add a loser bracket. And I was like, that'd be kind of cool.
Huge amounts of games, though.
Yeah, it would be a lot of games.
It's only an extra 4 games. It's only an extra 4 games, and we run a 6-week playoff. So.
I mean, we kind of already got a losers bracket, but just for the top 2, right? Like it's a tiny. They're in a with that. Like the problem is the losers bracket is 3 through
The way you
6,
get a losers
right?
bracket is if you have not top 2 going through top bracket, but top 4 and then bottom, then basically 5 and 6 fighting off in effectively the losers bracket and people dropping down into it.
I could see an argument for doing it that way.
I think you could do it that way. But Juggernaut match is so cool, getting a guaranteed first and second face up though. Anyway, yeah, food for thought.
Food for thought. I mean, I've been really digging the LLA system where they do the cut to top 5 and they do another best of 1 series. I'm all about getting more games in, so hey, that's where I am. But with that all said, from myself, Alex was actually go by MaskedSwan on the internet, Nymaera in the other side of the screen, or hopefully not the opposite side of your ears, and Initia1ise in the middle. Thank you so much for listening and or watching. You can find this podcast on all audio streaming platforms. Remember, you can check out each of our content and just social medias below each of our faces. That's at MaskedSwan for myself, at Initia1ise in the middle with a 1, ladies and gentlemen, and at Nymaera over on the other side. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and we'll see you all during playoffs.